Talk about nerves.
So you all, Tiffany just hit live so that we're streaming on Facebook.
Yes. Caitlin, can you verify?
Hey, I just texted you, Tiffany. We are up. We're live. It's all good.
All right.
Right. So
I'm going away.
Great. So we have 1 minute, everyone, until we are going to begin, so that we can let all of our attendees in and make sure that our presenters are ready. So just hold tight for 1 more minute.
How many do we have?
Well, Joe, we have over 170 registrants on the for the presentation, and then on Facebook Live, we hope to have an even larger group. For the annual meeting, we had a significant number of people on Facebook Live. So, and just remember that this will also live on our Facebook page so people can watch it later.
Yikes.
Yeah, it's going to be good. So we are at 4 o'clock, and I just would like to check in with my team to make sure that all of our participants are in and that we are ready to go. Anne, are we ready?
Do the same, this additional work. We're gonna have to write different agreements today.
So,
I continue to let people in, Bonnie.
Thank you. So good afternoon, everyone. As we're letting our attendees in, let me please remind you to mute yourselves. That includes our speakers who are not speaking at this time. So for registrants, please do us a favor and go down to the bottom left-hand side of your screen and hit that mute button, please. We are also going to ask you to put your video up. So this is a good time as other people are coming into the program. Just hit your video so that we also can see you and our presenters can see you. So although we want to hear your questions later, we don't want to hear you now in particular. So hit that mute button, but also let us see you on your video, please. Okay, Anne, checking in with you. How are we doing on letting all of our registrants in?
Bonnie, we are fine.
Great. Okay.
We have 66 participants right now.
Wonderful. So we are going to get started, everyone, and we are going to continue to let some people in, but we want to prize, as I know our board chairman is on the call, Sandra Rand, we prize punctuality. So we'd like to get started. So good afternoon and welcome to Landmarks Illinois' virtual education session on the state of the industry. I'm Bonnie McDonald, the president and CEO of Landmarks Illinois, and I'm very pleased to welcome our speakers, to welcome you, our attendees, as well as our board and staff members. We are all very happy that you have joined us today. I wanted to let everyone know that this presentation is being recorded right now, and it is currently also being shown on Facebook Live. So you can access the presentation after we are done by going to our Facebook page. Please, as I mentioned as people were coming in, but this is just a reminder, if you could please make sure that your mute button is checked. So that would be in the bottom left-hand corner of your screen. And at the same time, we would like to see you. It's very helpful to our presenters to see their your reactions to what they're saying. So we ask you to please make sure that your video is on. We also ask you to look at the right-hand corner to make sure that you're on speaker view instead of gallery view. That way you'll better see the speaker's presentations, and so you can see the difference here on your screen. You can also use the chat feature to react to the presentations or ask questions that can be funneled to the speakers later. So to find the chat feature, if you're not familiar with Zoom, you just have to go to the very bottom of your page and hover your cursor around the bottom. And in the middle, you'll see a little icon that is labeled chat. So you can click on that and then it'll allow you to type in your questions. You'll also have the opportunity to ask those questions in the breakout rooms at the end of the presentation today. So I'll give you more information as we get to the end about the breakout rooms. So if this is your first time meeting us, Landmarks Illinois is the only statewide nonprofit historic preservation organization that serves the entire state of Illinois. We help people save places for people by providing free technical assistance, advocacy, networking, and programming as well. And we provide financial assistance through our 3 grant programs as well as our new loan program. For over our nearly 50-year history, we have helped people in local communities save almost, over 22,000 places, the places that matter to them and to their communities. Now, this virtual seminar is being hosted by Landmarks Illinois' Real Estate and Building Industries Council. We call that the RBIC for short. So if you've seen the acronym, that's what it stands for. The RBIC is a specialty group within Landmarks Illinois that hosts programming specifically for those in the real estate, design, construction, as well as development and finance industries. And they've been doing that since 1993. Now, this is our first in a coming series of virtual educational programs and preservation-related seminars. So we'd really like to hear from you after the program is done about the kind of content that you're looking for that would be helpful to you. So please include those ideas in the survey that you are going to receive in your email at the end of this seminar. Now, we're pleased to welcome our panelists who are representing 5 unique perspectives in the preservation real estate industry. So let's get started with our first speaker. Our first speaker is Paul Carlisle, who will talk about the state of the lending industry. Now, Paul serves as Executive Vice President of Chicago-based Wintrust Commercial Banking. So I hope he is ready. Paul, welcome.
I am ready, Bonnie. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Okay, I will proceed. Well, the banking environment in short, and I am a commercial banker. I manage the commercial banking group at Wintrust. But on my one slide here, I understand there's a lot of interest in the real estate industry here today, and so the slide that I have here focuses on the real estate area. But generally speaking, the banking environment right now can be summarized as just kind of crazy, and really unlike anything similar to what I've seen in 35 years of working in middle market banking. Normally, you have kind of the expected cycles. You go into an economic downturn, and bankers spend most of their time working on troubled credits, on deal restructurings, amendments, covenant waivers, and there is plenty of that going on right now. Lots of borrowers are running through challenges here. The industries that are having those problems are well documented. So there's a tremendous amount of that work going on. However, in good economic times, bankers often spend that bringing in new business, doing new deals, helping existing customers expand. Believe it or not, there's plenty of that going on as well. So it's a kind of environment that really I haven't seen before, where we're busy working on troubled stuff while we're also busy working on new business. So it's an incredibly active banking environment going on right now. The biggest single negative that's operating out there is uncertainty. About the only thing I remember from my MBA from many years ago was that businesses really crave a certain degree of stability and certainty in their environment. That's when businesses grow and function the best. And we have uncertainty now like we've never had before. And much of it relates to the pandemic and when business life and regular life will return to normal. But we have a huge uncertainty on the political front, where we have a very binary decision from an economic standpoint that'll come up here in November as to 2 very different ways of looking at the economy, of looking at supporting businesses. And we have a great deal of uncertainty in the international markets. And that uncertainty is what it really makes it a challenge in the lending markets. And if you think about where is the most uncertainty and you follow that through, that's where you're going to find the industries where the greatest challenges are right now. And focusing specifically on the content of the slide, which was prepared for me by our head of our commercial real estate group. And you'll see where there's the most uncertainty is where there's the biggest challenges right now in real estate.
Paul, excuse me.
Yes.
I just am giving you your 1-minute warning. That's coming very quickly.
Wow. Okay. Well, let's just focus quickly on the slide then, and that is that the real estate, as I mentioned, market remains active in certain areas, multifamily, industrial, and net leased owner-occupied assets are still going spectacularly well, and deals are getting done. Not so much in retail, hospitality, and everybody wonders about office. Geography also comes into play. A lot of uncertainty, Chicago, a lot of uncertainty in Illinois, maybe less so in other markets, Nashville and Austin come to mind. So we don't know if the shoe's dropped on multifamily yet, because with the unemployment benefit going away, we may see rents, more requests for rent abatement. But overall, it's the market really varies based on the asset class you're looking at, and to some degree, the geography you're looking at.
Wow, Paul, you're right on time. Is there any other points that you would like to make before we move on?
No, other than to say that we're very optimistic that the market will continue to get better in many areas, though retail, real estate will be a concern for a long time, probably well after the pandemic's over.
Paul, thank you very much for that perspective. And for all of our attendees, we are giving our speakers quite a challenge to present in 5 minutes only, but it is because we wanted to give you the broadest array of what's happening all across this industry and keep our time reasonable. So Paul, thank you. And if you would like to muted yourself, I appreciate that. Thank you. So our next speaker is Tim Frens, who is a partner at the national-based certified public accounting and financial industry advisement firm Plante Moran. He is also a Landmarks Illinois board member and the chair of our finance committee. So very pleased to welcome Tim Frens.
Thank you, Bonnie. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
Perfect. Well, thank you, everybody. In the next 300 seconds or so, I'm going to try to cover 3 topics. One specific topic related to some relief that has been provided that's probably going to benefit some very, very limited number of projects, but since it's so fresh off the presses, I wanted to talk about it. But then I wanted to wrap up going over some insights that we've seen on HTC investor equity and their underwriting and pricing. So we help our clients monetize tax credits. Most developers can't effectively utilize the tax credits themselves. And so typically our involvement is helping them find investors and do the work that's needed to close with their tax credit investors. The bit of COVID relief that's recently come out requires a little bit of a backstory. And I got to be quick on this. With the Tax Reform Act of 2018, the historic tax credit went from a 1-year credit to a 5-year credit. It went from a credit you could claim when you completed the rehab to a credit that you would claim over a 5-year period. There was an exception. There was transition rules that were put in place for properties that met 2 criteria. One is that the property was owned prior to 12/31/17 and continues to be owned by the same owner thereafter, and that you met the substantial rehab test for a single phase project that's a 24-month substantial rehab test, and that end period had to end by June 30 of 2020. So there was kind of a rush, and I think Joe Antunovich is going to talk about his rush to the deadline for completing some of these projects to meet that criteria to be under the 1-year transition rules. We recently got guidance from the IRS that basically extended that deadline for any projects that would have met their substantial rehab test between March 31 or April 1, I'm sorry, of 2020 and March 31 of 2021, that they could extend that deadline from June 30 of 2020 to March 31 of 2021. So effectively a 9-month extension for those few transition projects that were scrambling to complete their substantial rehab by the middle of this year and were impacted by COVID-19. So that's number one. That's going to impact a pretty narrow bandwidth of people with projects. Now, I did want to share some insights we have on what the investor equity market's looking like. And by the way, this changes on a daily basis, and we are not an HTC investor. This is basically insights we have from talking to investors. The first point I'd like to make is that asset class matters. And I think it's intuitive, but right now hotels are struggling. And there's a lot of concern about what's going to happen with office space going forward. Projects that are going to be very difficult for HTC investors to underwrite are going to be hospitality hotels and spec commercial space. So commercial buildings that you might have your financing in place, but you don't have your tenants lined up. The assets that still seem to be in favor with the investors are the rental residential and commercial space where credit tenants are lined up. So where credit tenants have committed to the project, have signed leases, and of course, your debt financing and your other equity needs to be in line as well. So that's.
Tim, I'm sorry to interrupt you. You have about 30 seconds left.
No problem. And then the last step I want to talk about is the investor equity pricing. Unlike some other incentives, such as new market tax credits, and even the LIHTC world have seen some pretty dramatic decreases in pricing since COVID-19. The HTC investor equity pricing has actually held up. Price ranges have been, prior to the pandemic, around 80 to 85 cents per dollar of historic tax credit. We're still seeing pricing in the high 70s to low 80s. So for math purposes, if you deliver $5 million of historic tax credits on a $20 million deal, you can expect HTC equity of about 4 million. So the asset class matters, but the pricing actually has held up and remains to be seen whether it will continue to hold up. Thanks, Bonnie. That's all I've got.
Thank you very much, Tim. So as you may see, we wanted to start out with the money. That's usually what question we get most often is how to pay for preservation. So thank you very much to Paul and Tim for covering that. And now we want to talk with you about how to even get these projects started. So we're going to provide you with a developer perspective. So very happy to have our next speaker, who is also a Landmarks Illinois board member. Brad Moeller is the Senior Director of Development for the Chicago-based but international development company, CA Ventures. So welcome, Brad.
Great, thanks, Bonnie. As Bonnie said, I'm with CA Ventures. We primarily develop off-campus student housing, but over the last 5 years, we've started verticals in senior housing and multifamily housing, as well as some others. We had a discussion within the Landmarks group in May, and I look back at my notes from that, and it's amazing how many things have changed with regards to what we thought was going to happen in May and where we are now. And I think it just confirms that real estate development still feels a little unpredictable. My specific area of oversight with CA Ventures is in the student housing group and specifically construction. So I'll highlight some of that as well as some of the other things within CA and our effects of what we've seen from COVID. From a pre-development entitlement standpoint, we had a lot of, we build all over the country, and a lot of the cities we work in, they had staff shutdowns that affected schedules to get our building approvals. And obviously with student housing, the end dates are critical. They have to open in August when school starts, and therefore the start dates are equally critical. Some of those delays push the delivery of jobs a year, but in some cases it made the job go away and we are no longer pursuing it. So the virus impacted us in that way. Some cities were pretty impressive in that they were able to adapt and work from home like the rest of us and carry online meetings, and that helped us be able to proceed with some of those jobs. From an equity and lender perspective, we've just realized relationships are key. The people we're working with now on a regular basis and know and trust us, it goes a long way. We have a great group of equity partners and lenders that we work with, and now's the time we need them most. When we were managing through the COVID situation, we did a lot of analysis of numbers, what cities and states were doing in terms of handling construction shutdowns. As we all saw, everyone handled it a little differently, and we had to be on top of it to be prepared to know what could happen next. Many of our equity groups are still very interested in deals, which is encouraging. I think the student housing market has, there's some concerns as to what could happen from it, but we still see a lot of interest in the projects we're pursuing. From a construction perspective, we have over 30 active construction jobs across the country. That includes student housing, senior housing, multifamily. We track COVID cases, as I mentioned, extremely closely, and what states and counties, did and with regards to construction. Places like Washington State, Michigan, Pennsylvania shut down construction for long periods of time, which had an effect on us. We also spoke within our different groups, senior housing, multifamily, more than we ever have, just to see what they were dealing with and what we were dealing with. And I think we learned a lot from that, and we've tried to continue that communication.
Brad,
Yep.
Brad, your 1 minute warning.
All right, cool. I'll cruise through this. Nearly all of our jobs had some impacts with some COVID cases on site, so we had to deal with that, which resulted in some shutdowns. A case like State College, Pennsylvania, we were shut down for 39 days, and we're trying to open it up here in about 10 days, which obviously cost a lot of money. We also dug heavily into, and you'll hear more of this from the construction aspect, of what materials were affected. We first were focusing on things coming from China, Italy, Spain, and then there was some stuff that was affected in the United States later on. From a building management perspective, we've been very fortunate to not have a lot of cases. We took a lot of safety measures very early on. Our rent collections have maintained to be pretty high. I think some of that's attributed to parents that were able to maintain incomes, as opposed to what multifamily is probably seeing. Just jumping to the impacts on the future, we're looking at what should we be thinking about changes in design, and I know Joe will probably hit on that after me. And then changes to universities, what will they change? There are a lot of them we're moving to an online format that could become the norm, and students may not be going to the communities in which they are. And then I haven't talked much about senior housing, but obviously there is a huge impact to that, and changes to what changes in design could affect that. And on a positive note, we learned how to monitor construction from afar. And I think we learned some positive things of how we can do our jobs better without traveling as much.
Brad,
thanks.
Thank you. Yes, thank you very much for covering a lot in that time period. And as you said, we are able to segue into the design field. So I'm pleased to introduce our next speaker, Joe Antunovich, who is a longtime Landmarks Illinois board member, our past president, and a recent emeritus board member after serving his third 6-year term on the board. So in his day job, Joe Antunovich is the founder and president of the Chicago-based, but also working nationally, architecture firm Antunovich and Associates. So welcome, Joe.
Thank you, Bonnie, and welcome everybody. What I thought I'd do is just go through some of the buildings that we are delivering this fall. We are delivering over a dozen buildings, from this building in Charleston, South Carolina. And the challenges we have, our architectural services are due when the building opens. This project, a condominium project up in Lincoln Park, these are all projects that are opening either this month or next month. And our staff is overwhelmed, going from Washington, D.C., a residential complex in Washington, D.C., to other projects around the country. Another project in Washington, D.C., a renovation of an old building into a new building with 500 units. But our staff is taxed doing punch lists for buildings from off-campus residential housing in Tempe, Arizona, like this one, where we have to travel, we have to come back, we have to then quarantine for 14 days, and then before you know it, staff's turned around and having to go back again. But this is the challenge we have with out-of-state work. In some cases, we've consolidated and involved local architects to help us with the punch list and the delivery and takeover. We're delivering 5 off-campus student housing projects, and this is one of them in Gainesville, Florida. This is one where we do have a local architect helping us on the punch list. And so that our young people are not there in those hot states. Another project that we're just delivering in Lexington, Kentucky. And like Brad, we found a lot of activity in the student housing market. In fact, many of these projects that I'm showing you are almost 100% leased up to students. I think the students are going to actually activate these buildings rather than stay home and work from home. And even though the campus may be shut down, they still want that campus activity and that campus environment. So almost all of these buildings that I'm showing you, these 5 off-campus buildings, this one here in Champaign, is almost fully leased. And so that may be good news to mom and dad who are getting them out of the house. But also, when you were discussing hotels earlier, this is a project we're turning over in Tucson that has student housing, but also a new graduate hotel associated with it. And so these are the kinds of projects we're seeing now, a mix of uses, not just one single use, but uses that are being driven and then others coming in. On our historic perspective,
Joe, you got 1 minute.
we are also, can we move the slides a little bit quicker then, please? We've got work in Pennsylvania where we're restoring, this is a former press into an office space. The market we are seeing is that there's a lot of high-tech companies still out there looking for office space. But even though our work has had a little bit of a downturn, we're finding that there are new tenants out there, tenants for office buildings and tenants for residential high-rise buildings. These are projects that fortunately we have started during this difficult time, and there are people with money out there that are developing buildings. We ourselves are working from home. We ourselves are struggling in this tough time. Thank goodness for the payroll protection program that the federal government made available to all architects. Even working from home, we found our productivity to be extremely high. Looking forward to 2021 and beyond, think our backlog is good until the end of the year. But if some of you on this call can tell me what's going to happen beyond January 1, 2021, I'm all ears, because it's very, very uncharted territory. Thank you, Bonnie.
Thank you very much, Joe. Appreciate that. And that's a lot to ask our next speaker, but maybe he's a prognosticator of what's going to happen after January 2021. So pleased to introduce our final speaker tonight, who again is also a Landmarks Illinois board member, and we're pleased to have him on the board. This is Chris Lee, who serves as the president of Bulley and Andrews Masonry Restoration, which is also based here in Chicago, but has a regional focus as well as a national reach. So welcome, Chris.
Thank you, Bonnie. I'm excited to be here. Chris Lee with Bulley and Andrews. In construction, I've lived through several major economic uncertainties. There are best practices that we can use that can help us persevere during these uncertain times. We should practice adaptability, and we should evolve in our new micro and macro environments. There are a lot of great examples of business ingenuity in the news. I've heard stories of owners and lessees negotiating short-term win-win lease extensions. There are a lot of markets booming and holding steady right now: technology, grocery retail, camping equipment, RV rentals, car sales, of course, Amazon, to name a few. The hospitality market sector is suffering. Once the vaccine for COVID-19 is administered, hospitality will boom again. I cannot wait to travel and be with humanity. I am sure there are millions and millions of people feeling the same way. We will travel even if our budgets will not allow us. Money is cheap right now. The interest rates are low, so the residential building, residential renovations, and residential repair markets are holding steady. If the Federal Reserve Bank can navigate the pandemic and the vaccine is administered before interest rates are at zero, the residential market sector will positively carry through 2021. The commercial market sector leasing cycle took a hit this year. Of the 2020 leases that were expiring, the commercial renters either have closed their businesses or they have short-term extensions on their leases. If the vaccine is administered in early 2021, the 2020 commercial build-out cycle, along with the normal build-out cycle, will happen in 2021. Or 2020, 2021, along with the normal build-out cycle, will happen in 2022. That would be a huge market. Once the vaccine is administered, the government and the healthcare sectors will start planning and building so we are prepared for the next pandemic, if politics will allow it. The way to get through these times is to help each other out. Anxiety or uncertainty is our biggest enemy, not the pandemic. Anxiety can kill a bull market. Bringing comfort to people in business and in our personal lives is the key to get through this. Comfort is the government stimulus package, or comfort is working out a win-win short-term lease extension, or comfort is healthcare workers providing palliative care, or comfort is witnessing a business inspire others by adapting and evolving during this pandemic. Our comfort is giving your loved ones a warm hug, or comfort is music and art, or comfort is donating time or money to a cause you are passionate about, like Landmarks Illinois. Let's get to the fundamentals of comfort in all aspects of life. Comfort is being an active listener and having empathy. There is no comfort without empathy, and you cannot give empathy if you are not actively listening. Comfort will help us through these times. Anxiety will not, or uncertainty will not. Comfort can help us through the societal paradigm change. Working together as a team creates comfort, which brings confidence, and confidence brings ideas.
Chris,
And
I'm sorry to interrupt you in this really beautiful speech. We have about 30 seconds.
Okay, working together as a team creates comfort, which brings confidence, and confidence brings ideas, and ideas change the world. Thank you.
Oh, you were almost at the end too, so I apologize for that. Thank you very much, Chris. And I think that rounds it out very nicely so that we can really talk about those points about comfort and empathy and answer the questions that our attendees have been putting before us. So again, really would like to thank every one of our presenters for their very helpful guidance and the information in, as you saw, a very short period of time. We asked them to, I think, deliver a miracle in giving us the state of their industries in 5 minutes. And as you can see, they all delivered very well. So while each of them were presenting, Frank Butterfield, the director of our Springfield office, and Lisa D. Chiera, the director of advocacy for Landmarks Illinois, kept an eye on the chat and gathered questions for me to ask each one of you. And I will not be able to ask all of the questions that are coming in from the chat, from the audience during this live Q&A, but I did want to let everybody know that you have the opportunity to ask your questions if it was not answered during those breakout rooms. So let's get started. We have about 15 minutes at this point for our question and answer period. So I have some questions already to pose to each of you, starting with Joe Antunovich. So Joe, you are on deck, sir. So the question to you is, how will COVID-19 impact future designs for university buildings?
Thank you, Bonnie. I think what we're seeing is technological solutions to this great question. We have been designing buildings that adhere to the building code, and really not buildings that have been catering to the specific users as much as they should be. I believe that the design of buildings will actually head towards more sophisticated mechanical systems, and actually even some passive solutions with more buildings with operable windows so that we can get fresh air into them. The mechanical systems so that we change over the air as much as 4 times per hour rather than the code minimum right now of twice per hour. And creating that better environment with improved filtration that will be able to work with researchers and scientists where we can create situations where the comfort within the buildings are greatly improved to what we have now.
Thank you very much, Joe. Nice to hear about those passive solutions as well. So appreciate that. I'm going to throw the next question over to Tim Frens. So Tim, you are on deck. So what types of historic rehabilitations do you see as viable projects, either with or without tax credit equity, over the next 12 to 24 months in the Chicago region? Let me know if you need me to repeat that.
No, it's a great question. Of course, my crystal ball is not the most crystal clear thing in the world. Certainly, we have a number of projects going on right now that have already been financed, are already in the pipeline, are already being done. Real estate, of course, has long lead times, and so the real concern isn't what's going to happen in the next 12 months. What's going to happen in the next 12 months is what was teed up well before the pandemic. The concern is what's going to happen in 24 months. And I think that what we're seeing right now is investors not wanting to look at hospitality, not wanting to look at speculative commercial buildings. So I guess we have a number of clients that do hospitality, and they're basically looking at this as they're going to spend the next 12 to 15 months teeing up their projects, because ultimately, when we do come out of this pandemic, there will be opportunities because no new hotels will be started. At least that seems to be where we're going. But I think multifamily is going to continue to move forward, as is probably not retail so much. That's had its headwinds before COVID, but hospitality and certainly office buildings with credit tenants that are lined up. So that's kind of where I look at things playing out over the next 12 to 24 months.
Thank you very much, Tim. Yeah, that's informative about the pipeline. So thank you for that. And we're going to continue on definitely about construction. So Chris, we have a question for you. The question is, what are your thoughts on Amazon taking over vacant mall space?
Oh, that's a tough one. I think I just don't have the expertise on that. That's retail space and that's new, and we're in the restoration, and I'm in the we do restoration repairs, so I don't think I can answer that with any kind. I think Joe probably could answer that better. Maybe, I don't know.
Thank you, Chris. I mean, Joe, do you want to take that question?
I just read of that also. I think it's a fabulous idea. I think I was dreaming the other night that actually we were all working for Amazon ultimately, but to integrate them into these malls that have and will have very large 100, 200,000 square foot anchor tenants with no retail tenancy in sight. This will go towards that idea of having mixed use developments where we might have a little bit of technically manufacturing and then also retail, and also maybe converting some of the other upper levels of these shopping centers to retail. So I welcome this idea. I think it's a fabulous idea. I think they were mentioning JCPenney's and Sears, and those are in many cases the old anchors of shopping centers that also have all the easements. They have all the view easements, they have all the parking easements. So when you come to do something with those developments, they're very, very difficult to work with. So if Amazon can come to some agreement with them, I think it'll be a fantastic improvement.
All right, Joe, thank you. Are you a designer for Amazon in your dream? Is that?
No, I'm a worker. I'm there. I'm there sending out historic books.
Excellent. Well, if that is our future, we look forward to seeing you at our door. So we actually have a question that also has easements involved, this time a preservation easement. And Paul, this is a question for you. So it is a question coming from Champaign, Illinois. So this is with regard to a local landmark theater that is listed in the National Register. And it was recently put on the market. It does have a preservation easement on it. How do you view lending for theaters, performing arts theaters going forward? And is there anything that they can do to make it a better lending opportunity?
Well, theaters have been a tough space to lend into. There's obviously a lot of uncertainty in the current market right now as to when events are going to return to those spaces. It's as far as the making the loans. I think what makes it more attractive, quite frankly, is more equity, a lower advance rate against the property. There aren't a lot of alternative uses for it. It's a tough deal in any environment. It would be a really challenging deal now. Sorry.
No, that's very helpful. And when you think about equity in obviously a tough equity market, would you consider essentially equity from the local municipality to be part of that mix? Should people be looking at going to their cities, even though they're hurting at the same time?
Well, absolutely. And in fact, that's a great idea. Partnering up and maybe borrowing, so to speak, on the credit rating of the local municipality would be one way to solve that problem for certain. Some sort of creative partnership with the local government supporting it, or potentially lending their credit rating to a letter of credit. I've seen that, something along those lines. So that would probably be a really good way to go.
Wonderful. So thank you for that, for that question and suggestion that people can take away with them. And even more on the development side, Brad, we have a question for you, really globally thinking about strong markets. So the question coming to you is, I know that CA Ventures develops properties all around the world. Where are you seeing the strongest development markets?
That's a good question. I think, the crystal ball is a little foggy right now. We were just getting started at getting into development in the UK and in parts of Europe. And I think, we couldn't have predicted it, but our timing was a little bit off or bad. And we didn't do anything wrong. It was unpredictable. So while we are, still pursuing it, I think because things are active here in the United States and we understand it more, in terms of parts of the country that might be doing better than others. It's so hard right now with, just with respect to COVID financing, and then where there's a need for things like student housing or senior housing. So I'm not answering your question because it's hard to know right now. I think what's interesting to watch will be what a vaccine could do. Will people move out of cities? Will it affect universities? I think those are things we're all keeping an eye on. But as you've heard from a lot of the other people, a lot of the multifamily housing seems to be still going, and we have retail in a lot of our buildings, and that's something that we would love to talk to cities about not doing it now, because that's going to be a problem over the next several years. So it's hard to predict, and it's hard to adapt, but you just gotta kind of keep an eye out on everything and see what's going on.
All right. Well, Brad, I think you answered it. It may not be a particular locale, but you answered the question that multifamily is is still a strong market. So that is helpful. We have one more question, but I think this one we want to actually ask Frank Butterfield, the director of our Springfield office. And I'm not sure if he's exactly answered this via the chat, but in case you're not watching the chat, everyone, there was a question about the River Edge Redevelopment Zone historic tax credit and the fact that it is about to expire in 2021. So Frank, can you talk about Landmarks Illinois' advocacy on state tax credits?
Of course. Thanks, Bonnie. Yeah, while that credit will expire in December 2021, our legislative advocacy is already underway. We had a meeting with our partners at AIA Illinois and coming up with a strategy both for if we have a veto session this November, December, but much more likely an extension could be passed during the full legislative session, January through May. So we're going to be partnering with the 5 communities that have benefited from those tax credits to highlight their work with legislators and keep tuned. The best way is likely our website, landmarks.org, and the Facebook page to see our legislative efforts come that session.
Frank, not to put you on the spot, but can you tell people the 5 cities that where they are eligible?
Yeah, once you say that, my brain will probably fail, but no. It's Elgin, Aurora, Rockford, Peoria, and East St. Louis.
Great, thank you. And we do have a statewide tax credit that is available to all cities around the state, but it is a competitive process. And you can find more about that incentive on our website at landmarks.org. So presenters, thank you very much. We are right on time to close our Q&A session. I think this is a great time for us to go into our breakout rooms. So before we do that though, I would like to thank everybody on here attending the RBIC virtual education session. We do appreciate you being a part of this. And as I said, don't leave yet. The breakout rooms are coming. Now, today's event is free because of the generosity of our corporate sponsors. And I just want to recognize them up on the screen. We truly appreciate their generosity. As a nonprofit, Landmarks Illinois is dependent on charitable donations to support the work that we do that you've already heard about somewhat today. And we would like to thank those generous companies that have signed on as our annual corporate sponsors. You see them listed here. And if you are part of a company that would like to learn more about our annual corporate sponsorship program, please reach out to Tiffany Williams, our events manager. Her email is twilliams@landmarks.org. You can also find that information on our website. Now, everyone attending this afternoon is also invited, and I urge you to get involved yourself by making a donation to Landmarks Illinois. That can be at any level. You can become a member, you can give to our appeals, you can just make a special donation to support this kind of programming. So you can do that by going to our website. Again, that's landmarks.org. And up in the very top right, there's a big button, blue button that reads donate, and you can just click there and choose how to support our work. We'd also love you to come back to our events in the future as well. So you can see a slide here that the next virtual event that we have as part of our Snapshots lecture series, and that is about the survey being done right now called Women in the Built Environment. This is a survey that Lisa D. Chiera is working on with other partners to survey the designs of women in Illinois. That would be the contractors, developers, engineers, consultants, as well as architects. We are trying to learn the many contributions that women have made. As we say, that there are no local landmarks in Chicago, for example, that were designed by women. So if you know of women who have done work, please submit them to us at landmarks.org as well. And after that, you'll find more information on our website about our annual Richard H. Driehaus Foundation Preservation Awards, which is coming up at a virtual awards ceremony on October 21st. And that is a feel-good event where you can learn directly from the people who have gotten these kinds of projects done that you're interested in order to be on today's webinar. So I did mention earlier that we want to hear your feedback. And Tiffany is going to send you a link in your email after the program is done with a quick survey, very quick. Your feedback is going to help us design programs for the future. So please just take a moment to give us that helpful programming idea. I also do want to recognize our panel today lacked the diversity that is reflected in the real estate industry. And as we design future events, we are going to ensure that our panel represents the diversity in the real estate industry. I'd also like to really thank my team of colleagues, the staff of Landmarks Illinois, for all their work to put this together, especially Tiffany Williams, our events manager. We're going to launch the breakout rooms just one moment. I just want to tell you that, there you can further discuss these questions if you didn't get to ask them. You're going to be put into a particular room that you requested with one of our panelists today. So all the attendees have been pre-assigned to a breakout room. So you're going to automatically go into that breakout room. There's nothing you have to do. There's no scripted format for those rooms. Just, talk easily, network with people in the room, ask questions. It's really meant to be a great networking time for you. And if you need to leave the breakout room before we bring you out, you can just click the red button that reads leave. And that's going to bring you out into the main room, this room we're in right now. And you can either be you can be assigned to a new room if you want to try something different, or you can leave the event if you need to. We're going to close the breakout rooms at 5:10 sharp and bring you back for just very short closing words. So at this time, you're going to go into your rooms and enjoy your conversations, everyone. Thank you.